in the Bahamas tonight, landmark legislation debated in Parliament today. Straight ahead, the tenets of the new Freedom of Information Bill. More of those disputed North Andros constituents removed their names from the local register amidst a hearing and a warning from the Prime Minister. And Sandals takes a big step today as it opens a new $17 million expansion. All those stories and more straight ahead in the Bahamas tonight.
Covering the islands of the Bahamas, ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight.
This portion of the news is brought to you by McDonald's. McDonald's, I'm loving it.
Good evening and welcome to the Bahamas Tonight, the National Report. I'm Keishla Adderley. Thanks for joining us. Topping the news tonight, landmark legislation is being debated in Parliament, which will open this to the scrutiny of the public, the affairs of the agencies of government. The Freedom of Information Bill, forecast as one of the government's agenda items during this electoral term, is now before Parliament, placing the Bahamas in the company of nearly 100 countries where government information is by law accessible to the public, and notably to journalists seeking a side of the story that they haven't had free access to in the past. Janaea Noel Ferguson has more.
A monumental piece of legislation that will trigger the greatest public reform to date in the country. That's the view of Desmond Bannister, MP for Carmichael and Minister of Education, who says under the Freedom of Information Act, every government ministry will have a legal obligation to publish its functions.
Just as private sector companies are required to report to their shareholders, so too, sir, public sector leaders will be required to report to their stakeholders, the Bahamian public.
Despite this massive turnaround for public disclosure, Bannister explained that some information remain exempt for safety reasons.
Could negatively impact law enforcement by endangering life or safety, or could compromise investigations or prosecutions, or prejudice investigation procedures.
Leading off debate for the opposition was MP for Fox Hill Fred Mitchell, who said that the bill requires some tweaking. He believes that a giant leap toward real freedom of information would be if cabinet meetings, among other things, are also made public.
My colleagues probably don't even agree with me on this, but I even believe we ought to have open cabinet meetings. Don't see the reason why we can't.
MP for Killarney, Dr. Hubert Minnis, and MP for Elizabeth, Ryan Pinder, also weighed in on the bill.
The original Bahama contract, when this contract was signed with some degree of secrecy, with this Freedom of Information Bill, Mr. Speaker, those information would be available for the people.
This legislation, in my opinion, does not go far enough in its protections. It just provides for the legal protection for whistleblowers. The legislation, Mr. Speaker, should set forth penalties and outline what the protection mechanisms are.
The Freedom of Information Act is expected to open up accountability on all government levels. Janaea Noel Ferguson, ZNS News.
Moving for the second reading of the bill was Member of Parliament for Marathon and Minister for the Environment, Dr. Earl DeVoe. While supporting the Freedom of Information Act, Minister DeVoe sent out a warning to social media users of platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. He said while the bill will not deny this group access nor curtail bad conduct, users ought to be more responsible.
Nurturing a culture of freedom of information, we must guard against secrecy, obfuscation, and nurture a culture where the public has a right to know. This bill seeks to do so. Mr. Speaker, sometimes it's easy to believe that we Bahamians are in a war between ourselves, but we're not. We are in a struggle to provide good government and pursue inclusive development with limited resources in a highly competitive world. However, there are some who prefer to keep us at war with ourselves because it suits their purposes. But this is only a sham, a deception at sustaining support under false pretenses.
Highlighting the WikiLeaks saga and its impact on bilateral relations, Minister DeVoe says talking about a conspiracy is one thing, but detailing the facts are quite another. And as far back as backroom deals and secret conspiracies are concerned, this bill will advance more transparency.
In this deceitful worldview, Almost everything is turned into a sinister conspiracy concocted in a back room for the benefit of a few powerful special interests to the detriment of the many. One of the best ways to open up a closed-door process is to legislate for that to happen. This Freedom of Information law has the potential to dispel fears about secret deals, cronyism, personal favors, preferential contracts, and other perversions of the public interest for private gain.
Former journalist, now MP for West End and Bimini, Obi Wilchcombe, says members of the Fourth Estate should welcome the historic legislation. However, he feels it should include protection for journalists as it does for whistleblowers.
Protect the whistleblower. What about the journalist? The whistleblower can provide information. Suppose that information is needed, and suppose that information is not given. Does the journalist go to the courthouse or subjected to the courthouse? And if you are subjected to the courthouse, and if they don't give the information, are they subjected to the 7 days that you are and can receive for contempt? Mr. Speaker, so they have to be protected too. You've got to protect the journalist.
Now, Mr. Wilchcombe also lamented the poor treatment of journalists at times.
And their responsibility as the Fourth Estate is to ensure that they look at all the other estates and manage the conduct of whether it's the judiciary, the executive arm, the parliament. They have a responsibility, an awesome responsibility. But oftentimes we do not even provide the journalists with a contract to secure their tenure so that we can control how they behave, what they write, and we can push them in and out. When they are professional people that ought to be given and paid for doing their jobs.
That list of 30 people who are at the center of a hearing in North Andros for reportedly registering illegally in the constituency is dwindling, as some of those being accused of attempting to defraud the parliamentary process have had a change of heart. Shanique Miller has details.
According to the FNM's North Andros branch, the phone calls, withdrawals and transfers began late Friday afternoon and continues. FNM generals in North Andros say persons whose name appeared on the voters' register and are scheduled to face questioning as to their rights to vote in the constituency want out.
They are going to come here and have their names removed, and some have already done it.
These ones who are coming to do it, where are they now?
Of course, in Nassau, Freeport, yes.
But they contacted the office today?
Yes, they do not want to be a part of this. They said that they are, this is something that they would normally do every election, but after hearing about the situation in Andros, they do not want to be a part of it. They're coming here and they're going to have their names removed.
Alfie Stubbs, who appeared on the witness stand at last Friday's hearing to challenge one of the 30, who he believes is illegally registered in the constituency, says he and his team are not intent on dividing North Andros. They simply want a clean and fair election. Stubbs says the people illegally registered, although originally from Andros, left the island years ago and reportedly now live in areas of Grand Bahama and New Providence.
The PLP say that not only are you all running scared, but the FNM is guilty of the same thing. Are you all guilty also of planting votes?
I'm involved with our Minister Bannister campaign at the highest level. We haven't sat down with anyone to organize any flying in any voters. We did not do that. We did not encourage anyone to do that. As a matter of fact, you know, we went out there and we are the ones who are protesting it. Why would we protest something on one hand and do the opposite on the next? We don't go that way.
Now, during testimony last Friday, the first witness testified that he voted in North Andros before, and Stubbs not only knew, but remained silent.
Why didn't you speak out the last time?
Well, the campaign that I worked with him, I was a junior in the campaign. That's my first time getting involved. I did not know about voter planning or the pros and cons about voting in and out of constituencies. I did not know. I didn't know any better. Now I know.
At the end of the day, Stubbs and his team say it's the people of North Andros who should decide their member of parliament, void of any outside interference. The hearing continues this Friday. Shanique Miller, ZNS News.
Well, as you heard Shanique say, the North Andros hearing continues this Friday. At the start of the hearings, the Progressive Liberal Party's lead attorney, Philip Brave Davis, said the newly amended 2011 Parliamentary Registration Act makes it possible for a Bahamian who owns a home on 2 different islands to choose which island he will register in and vote in. On Saturday night in Grand Bahama, Free National Movement leader Prime Minister Hubert Ingram slammed Davis's rationale.
I have any F&M voter anywhere who is registered in the wrong constituency, who is registered where he doesn't live or she doesn't live, I would ask them publicly to go and correct it. I wouldn't have my deputy leader getting up and announcing that because I own a house in Abaco, I pay light bill in Abaco, pay water bill in Abaco, I go to Abaco, but I live in Nassau. How the hell I could vote in Abaco?
Alaran is on the move. Alaran is on the move.
I gotta vote where I live. I live in town, so I vote in town. And that's what we want everybody to do. Vote where you live.
Well, still to come in the Bahamas tonight, Sandals' leap of faith in better economic days ahead. That story is still to come.